Good morning and welcome to the 2815 commercial valve training. Feel free to ask questions during the presentation if you have them. If not, you can use the chat feature and use that if you want to go ahead and ask. That being said, we'll go ahead and get started. The 2815 is the newest valve that Pentair has designed in the commercial space, and this is a very innovative valve for Pentair. We'll go over this list of items here between features, benefits, specifications, all the certifications, power head, the 1.5 meters that come with it, and its comparison to its other 1.5 brothers in its family, and all the various service assemblies literature that's available for the unit. Features and benefits of the 2815. It is our first transition from low lead brass into stainless steel. It's 316 stainless steel, and that's because the metallurgy of low lead brass, when you start pulling the lead out of the structure of brass, you create a very porous metal. And even with the epoxy injection that we did with those valves, we were seeing a porosity that could lead to leaks well within the lifespan of that valve. So stainless steel gets us away from the on-the-line failures and in-the-field failures that we were seeing with low-lead brass, and it gets us away from having any contact with lead whatsoever from brass as is, getting us into all those markets that have low-lead brass requirements. Plus, it also opens up healthcare and certain process waters where the end user is going to prefer to see stainless steel. The other thing is the redesign of this valve allows us a greater flow rate through the valve, 35% greater than our competitor in the same size class. We have 70 GPM peak flow through this valve. Our competition is at 52 GPM. We have one piston that provides the functionality of a two-piston valve, so we're developing a standby piston in one single unit, or you can use an external activated valve if you wanted to use standby presently. It's going to save time on install and expense. It's going to be a compact, elegant design, and we have stainless steel meters available up to 3-inch at this point in time, kind of a hint at where we'll be going in the future. So with that step up in material from stainless steel to brass, it allows us to access those high purity water spaces like semiconductors, certain process waters when it comes to foods, healthcare, pharmaceutical applications. It also provides greater corrosion resistance in some challenging waters, or when you're doing regens with strong acids and strong bases. It allows for you to use those regenerants with better performance. Much more hygienic because of the tighter pore structure of the stainless steel. It allows access into certain markets that we didn't have before. It's also a fantastic safeguard against lead because stainless steel does not contain any lead, so it gets us around those Prop 65 labels, even though there was no water contact with the brass. Because of the epoxy coating, you still have to have a Prop 65 label. It's a nice thing about the stainless steel. So 316 stainless steel, a continuous service flow rate of 70 GPM, and a backwash of 70 GPM. So what that does for us is it gives us the ability to use those heavier medias in a commercial space at higher flow rates, where we can't really do that on the 2900 and 3900 valves. So it gives us filtration applications with those heavy medias like Corsex or the magnesium oxide media. They're downflow valves. You have a backwash capability that will accommodate tanks up to 36 inches and filters up to 36 inches based on a 10 GPM per square foot backwash flow rate. We have a top hinge on this enclosure that actually rests on top of the valve, so you can use it as a tool caddy. So when you're going up and down that ladder to service a valve, or work on the equipment, you can bring your tools, set it right up there in the caddy, right where you're working on the valve. Very, very convenient. It's a protective cover for water resistance and corrosion resistance and UV stability. It's a NEMA 3 rating. It's meant for water coming down, not bouncing up. So think about that with outdoor installations, that if you're on the storm-driven side, on the west side of buildings, where you're going to get the prevalent rain from, want to make sure that the valve is going to have a lot of splash up and at it if you're going to install it outside. It's a time-tested, hydraulically balanced composite piston for service and regen. It's, our piston is for the 1.5-inch head, Teflon coated. New hinge drive motor that eliminates removal from the prop power head when servicing. It folds and locks out of the way. It's a feature that I love from a technician's perspective. It's good up to 150 degrees F for incoming water with no separate or additional components for high temp. So this can handle most standard water heaters coming out set at 140, coming out to be, if you need to use it for a warm water or hot water softener before a booster heater for large, warewashing components and things like that. But if you're going to soften water, I prefer softening before the water heaters just for that savings as well. So the spec sheet's available. It's going to be 1.5 inches. You have cycles available, 3 or 5, depending on whether backwash, a filter or a softener. You have a peak flow rate of 90 GPM on this unit. Downflow only, adjustable cycles, yes. A wide range of controllers are available: XTR2, SXT, NXT2, and your electromechanical time clock. You do have 1 inch and 1.5 inch paddle meters available for this. That includes sleeving an 1.5 inch meter down to the 1 inch side if you need that. It comes with a 4-inch mounting threaded body for 4-inch tanks. It has an 1.5 inch, drain connections all the way around. Plugged, and this is a great feature for technicians in the field doing process water with this large plumbing. 1/8-inch plugged NPT ports for test ports, so you can put in a small bit of stainless steel tubing with a silcock or a valve to have test ports, or you can mount pressure gauges in the side of the valve for filter application, so you can have differential pressure between in and out, so you can set that backwash more accurately. Plus, it allows you quick access to testing water. 1/2-inch brine line. It's 8 3/4 inch from the top of the tank to the top of the unit. You can pull the pin on the cover here in order to remove the cover if you don't have that clearance on top. That's sometimes an issue with commercial installs. But this is one of the nice things about this valve is we have the same performance between a bypass piston and a no bypass piston in the unit. So that gives us uniform performance across the applications that you may want to set this valve to. The certifications it comes with, it's ANSI and NSF 61 for drinking water components. It's NSF ANSI 372 for lead content, low or no lead content. It's UL listed in Canada and the US. and it's RoHS compliant if you're shipping to Europe. So here's the back side of the valve. You can see we have an inch-and-a-half outlet, inch-and-a-half inlet, and inch-and-a-half drain line with an internal drain line flow control that just unscrews. You have a half-inch brine line here, and we'll get into the features why this configuration is a little bit special here. But this is the drain line flow control is just screwed in by hand, no tools really required. We do recommend ordering unions to service this valve to be installed. We do have stainless steel meters. So when you're going to be making plumbing connections with stainless steel to stainless steel with a union, you can see here, you're going to want to use a nickel impregnated Teflon tape that's recommended, excuse me, for stainless steel, so that you get a proper tight seal. If you are using pipe dopes, they have to be potable water rated pipe dopes to assemble this product. But we're going to recommend, and you have to have a union to install the meter, but I would recommend getting unions for the other two ports as well, just to make the valve much more serviceable in the future in case you have to replace a valve body or something along those lines, or access any of the components. Multiple unions just makes it a lot easier. So I would order 3 unions with this valve, installing it. You have your sample ports here. They are pre-tapped. Just a hex key or Allen wrench to pop in and remove these. They're marked in and out on the body, so you know which one is which. You can put pressure gauges in here or sample valves. You could actually have differential pressure monitoring that can trigger a backwash if you needed to, if you had the sensors for doing so. And a little bit of ingenuity, you can set these up to backwash on differential pressure. The valve body, the 1720 injector body, the nice thing I like about this from a service perspective is this screw right here. This holds the valve, the brine valve body on the injector onto the unit itself. So I can service this injector without having to ever disassemble it or take it off the body of the valve. It's held in place. You have a built-in disperser here, that third retaining screw, 2 screws, 8mm sockets will access this. We really only need 3 tools to service this unit: an 8mm, a 10mm socket, and an adjustable wrench to remove the brine line. We'll see here in a minute. The unit comes with the injector size and color and a sticker mounted on the cover, so they should match when servicing. So it's a nice little addition. And if you're going to replace these injectors, they do come with a new sticker to put on the valve body. So we have one family of one-piece injectors that cover the entire 1600 and 1700 size injectors. So we are able to go from 12-inch tanks up to 36-inch tanks. Anything with a 4-inch opening on it, the 12-inch size and up, we're able to have one single piece injector. Drain line flow control. This is an 1.25 inch internal housing. It screws into the body of the valve just finger tight, and it utilizes 3 different flow washers. We do recommend a union to put over this for service if it needs to be inspected, but no need for that heavy external brine line flow control. It's all internal for the body. I would suggest that if you are going to service this and install this, mark with a Sharpie on the back side of the valve what flow control you do have in it so a technician knows, or inside with a post-it note inside the top cover of this. You can put all the specs, a service card or whatever, inside this lid, and that way you know what's inside that housing. So here are the flow controls. They are all marked and stamped on the washers. They clip in, and for the small washers, you have a retaining disc that the washer sits into that you pop into place. Same thing with each individual size up until a full, white ring that's just a wide open 70 GPM. So from 3.5 gallons per minute up to 70 GPM on flow, from softening to wash on filters. Now, the cover is available in black only. You can get bezels that sit in here that are blue, black, or silver. This will match up to SXT, NXT, XTR2. Hinge from the top, so you can pull this pin for more clearance. I just love this feature of this technician's perspective. It sits on the valve, so you don't have to worry about this hanging and bearing this weight. You've got a 3-sided seal here on the unit, so you only have to worry about splash up. But this makes it very convenient for technicians who are going up and down ladders to service this equipment on these large tanks to have your everything available right then and there, with the unit. You have a full host of controllers, XXT DC unit if you're using the SXT. We have the NXT2 if we're going to be networking these tanks. And in the future, we'll be having a bypass piston coming out. So you'll be able to use these similarly to the 2900s and the 3900s. Look for that to come out here in the future shortly. XTR2, so you have that premium touch capacitance touch display with its variability and auxiliary ports on it as well. The standard electromechanical time clock is available for these units. Also, one of the nice features is all these motors and controllers hinge out of the way. All of them are, all the digital ones are going to cradle into this nesting box that we have that locks into place, so you can upgrade from one to the other just by snapping into place. This motor folds out of the way, and we'll show that to you here in a minute. Power on the electromechanical time clock, you'll still need the brick. This is 124 volts at 24 volts AC, level 6 efficiency. It's corded, cord connected 2-pin connector. It's for the electromechanical, and it's used on current valves today without the 2-pin connector as well. So this is what you're going to get with the electromechanical. I think going digital is almost worth avoiding this heavy monstrosity. It's just a personal preference. U.S. power supply for the digital ones, 100 to 240 VAC, down to 24 volts. It's level 6 efficiency, so it's only pulling juice when it needs to. Removable AC line cord that's substituted for another, so you can send this to different countries just by changing the adapter. 2-pin connector, green LED when powered. And this is for the NXT2, SXDC, and XTR2 power timers. So the drive motors here is one of the great features about this valve is how it's serviceable. You have you remove 2 10-millimeter bolts, pull the pin connecting the motor armature to the piston, and the motor folds out of the way, giving you access to the brine valve and the piston without ever removing this back plate. for either the logic, switch logic, electrical mechanical driven timer, or the optical sensor driven motors, which are all the digital ones. They use the same motor for both. So you have consistency in parts. You have a remove the quick piston rod clip. It's just a clevis pin or a cotter pin. You pop it out of the hole in the center of the bipale, in the center of the piston, and everything stays out of the way so you can work and access this. Very nice feature for a technician. So you're going to remove these three 10mm bolts. These are threaded ports on the valve. This is stamped in the head, if you can see it, with the outline of this piston assembly, and it can only go on one way. It only aligns one way. You have to get really creative with some tools to put this in the wrong way, so you get good alignment every time it's done. You have a piston, single piece piston cartridge, and you have bypass pistons and no bypass pistons, and it's stamped right here on the sticker which piston you have when you order one of these. It comes with the full assembly. So you have in both pistons bypass and no bypass composite Teflon coated piston. The end plug is labeled white is a bypass piston, black is a no bypass piston. Once again, there's that stamping of the unique triangle that goes into that space. You have one single piece seals and spacer cartridge that pops in. You have pry points on this head if you need to pry them out and apart in the field when you go to remove it. And since these are essentially disposable items, and whenever you change a cartridge kit, you change the seals and spacers, there is a third side that does not have an indent. If you really needed to get out a dent puller and cut a slot in that with a Dremel tool or something, you could actually do that if you had one really seized in there from neglect. Other than that, we would just normally stick that cotter pin back in through the piston head, the stem here, and use that as a handle to pull that out. We tested these in some rather difficult, challenging water in San Antonio, Texas at a car wash, and after a year of running this assembly pulled out by hand. You have an O-ring seal here on the assembly. Want to make sure that's lubed prior to install on a replacement. The 1720 brine valve, this is what makes this so much easier to service between the fold out of the way motor that holds into place. All you have to do is take a 7/8 inch or adjustable wrench, loosen this up, and it allows it to be pulled straight through the backing plate without removing the backing plate. You remove these three 8mm screws and this clip, the whole injector assembly comes out, and then you're able to unscrew the brine valve from the body and pull it straight out. So very, very serviceable. No more juggling, heavy motors and components by removing this plate. Everything is quickly accessible, right, without hands-free. When you're dealing with these large tanks and standing on ladders working on, that's a great benefit. You don't necessarily need a second guy on site to hold things up for you and those sorts of things, servicing this equipment. It's a 1720 brine valve. It's composite material. It's a brass Teflon coated piston and a brass Teflon coated rod in this brine valve for optimal function. It's a 1/2 inch compression nut for the brine tubing as well here. So traditional components, but with improved serviceability. You have 2 1/2 inch conduit holes for the timer on the right side. You have a 1 1/2 inch conduit hole on the motor for the drive motor on the left side if you need to do hard wiring on these units, or seal tight sort of installations when networking things, if that's required by code. You have 1 3/4 inch conduit hole for the timer on the right side. You can see the knockouts right here. You have auxiliary switch kits. They're marked in 2 locations on the motor. You have switch off after brine fill, B and F, and then you have switch off after rapid rinse, RR. Micro switches mount right there conveniently. We now have an 1.5-inch stainless steel meter paired with this unit. It has a universal cap, so you can use it with a time clock or a digital meter, so it'll pick up both. You have down to 1.5 GPM in the 1.5 inch. They can be sleeved, which is a nice thing to do. You have your 1.5-inch stainless steel 316 unions that you can order with this. I recommend ordering 3 to make the valve very serviceable. You have 4 8mm caps. It allows you to exchange caps if that's time to repair it. You have a standard range up to 10,000 gallons or an extended range up to 50,000 gallons, depending on which cap you use. The extended range cap is the one with the higher top on it versus the lower here. And for those situations where you're dealing with low flow draw, but you need that 1.5-inch flow rate, you can sleeve an 1.5-inch meter down to a 1-inch standard pipe, so you'll get down to either 5,000 gallons or the 25,000 gallon range. If you use an extended range cap that's sleeved, you can do 25,000 gallons, or you can drop it down to a 5,000 gallon range on it. With the sleeve, you can get down to 0.7 or down close to a 0.5 GPM. Where we see this being done is in a lot in grocery stores where you have lots of equipment, but lots of low flow rate associated with those pieces of equipment. That way we're able to pick up a low flow with these meters back of house while servicing a 0.5 gallon per minute coffee maker up front. So those sorts of applications come into play, or servicing ROs and those establishments where you have low flow draw. We want to make sure we're not bypassing water. So comparisons to its brothers that came before it, the 2815 has better continuous flow rate than the 2850. The 2850S has comparable, which is where we kind of get the flow rate designs from for the 2815. Peak is much better than the 2850. It's the same as the 2850S, but we're still dealing with a brass body valve here. The CV is better than in the 2850, and maximum backwash at 70 GPM as well. We did not have a no bypass piston for the 2850S, so you get full functionality of both of these valves in one replacement with a more hygienic and acceptable material to certain marketplaces. So the dimensional differences between these, they're basically going to, if you're going to do replacements of the 2850 and 2850S, plumbing is going to be required to do, just because we are going to be a little bit higher on the outlets and inlets of these fittings. So if you're going to be replacing 2850s and 2850Ss in the field with the 2815s, note that it's not a direct matchup. You can attempt to line up the ports in the field so that if you had a 2850S in the field and wanted to get close on the plumbing position, you would start the valve on top of the tank where you want it to be at a 7 o'clock position and lock it in to try to match the 6 o'clock start position of the 2850S. This is kind of useful. It helps prevent having to romance a large tank full of water into position, by, hopping it around, which can be quite problematic and can help save time if you get this correct when you're doing just spinning on a new valve on an older tank. It allows you a little bit of accuracy.
Hey, can I ask a question? Are the inlet and outlets on the same, in the same orientation? The inlet on the left side of both valves and the outlet on the back end?
It's the same orientation as the 2850S. Actually, on all three, they're the same orientation. You have drain, 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 outlet, 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 outlet.
Perfect. Obviously, I've never seen those other valves in the service, but that'd be helpful.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, if you're having to start crossing over, inch and a half plumbing all over the place, that gets a bit expensive. But yeah, we kept the orientation the same, so we wouldn't drive our installers insane.
Yeah.
Some key differences between these units is we've gone to a 3/16 stainless steel lead-free brass. We have a full 1.5-inch drain line that you basically change the internal flow controls rather than having to manage different plumbing sizes coming out of those drains. So it gives you full range of flow with 1.5-inch valve. Both 1.5-inch NPT or BSP applications. We have sample test ports on both treated and raw. On the side of the valve body rather than at the top, 1/2-inch brine line and one injector assembly that handles the full range of the product. It's a 4-inch mounting base. It is a little bit taller by a couple inches over the top of the previous units, but they both mount flush with the top of the tank or at a minus 0.025. So if you're cutting that distributor height flush to the top of the tank, we should be good with installing this unit. Service assemblies that are available, we have replacement pistons for both bypass and no bypass, and the seal and spacer kit. This is really, really nice, very quick serviceable valve. You can service one of these as fast as you can service a 5800 or a 5600 valve. Really, really efficient service assemblies on this unit. You have drive assemblies with auxiliary switches and brine fill with the switches already included. You have your optical drive assembly and brine fill for your digital motors. So both available for what you need. Brine valve assemblies with no flow washer. If you're assembling them yourself and using separate washers, you have one in 1 GPM, 2 GPM, and 5 GPM stock. Or you can order your flow washers and go anywhere in between. Service assemblies, you have an injector kit. You can replace everything but the injector itself. As a service assembly, you have your gaskets, your O-rings, your quick connect pin, your housing cover. You have a filter plate kit if you're going to convert them over in the field, where you can switch out the assembly by removing this assembly and putting in the plate with the gasket and a plug in the back of the unit for removing the brine valve. And then you have the full family of injectors for 12-inch tanks up to 36-inch tanks. Your meter sleeves, so you can sleeve these in the field if you have a softener that's out there not picking up low flow. You can go drop down from the extended range into standard range and sleeve. The unit comes with the flow straighteners, the O-rings, the cap, the O-ring cap, everything you need to adjust the meter to its proper range or proper sensitivities. Electronic timers are available with the 5800 SXT, the SXT DC, all different assembles available. The XTR2, the 5800 XTR2 touchscreen without the hinge, all the various electromechanical timers, and the NXT2 is also available for this unit as well. You have all the different literature and cell sheets available.
Thank you very much for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and we'll talk to you soon, I hope.